If you'd told me at the start of the school year that I'd spend my senior prom witnessing something that would change everything, I wouldn't have believed you. I thought I knew my classmates. I thought I knew how the world worked, how people were. But that night, everything I thought I knew shattered, and what rose from the pieces was something I'd never forget. It all started with Sam Keller. Sam wasn't like the rest of us. He was quiet, kept to himself, and didn't seem to care much about fitting in. His clothes weren't the latest brand names. His phone was old, cracked, the kind of thing that would have gotten him laughed out of any circle at our school. But what really made him a target was his dad. Sam's father was a Navy SEAL veteran. Not just any SEAL, but one who had come home from war, changed forever. The man had lost a leg overseas and walked with a noticeable limp, supported by a steel prosthetic and a cane. He had scars, both visible and invisible, and in a town where image was everything, people noticed. Kids noticed. And when kids notice, they can be cruel. It started small. Whispers in the hallway, snickers when Sam walked by. "Hey, is your dad gonna bring his pirate leg to career day? Does he polish his medals or just his cane?" The comments grew bolder, meaner. Sam ignored them. He kept his head down, eyes forward, never rising to the bait. But I saw the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his hands clenched at his sides. I saw the pain he tried to hide. By spring, it had become a game. Who could get the biggest laugh at Sam's expense? At lunch, kids would mimic a limp when he entered the cafeteria. During gym, they'd ask if he wanted a head start, just like your old man probably needs. Teachers tried to stop it, but the bullying slipped through cracks, hidden behind forced smiles and fake jokes. I remember one day in particular. It was just after school, and I was grabbing my books from my locker. Sam was at the end of the hall heading toward the exit when Jeremy Lott, our star quarterback and resident jerk, called out, "Hey Sam, your dad teaching you how to hop fences yet?" The hallway erupted in laughter. Sam froze, just for a second. Then he kept walking, head high, back straight, but I saw his jaw tighten, his fists ball up at his sides. Prom was coming, and with it came more taunts. "Think your dad can dance with that leg? Maybe he can park in the handicapped spot so you don't have to walk too far." The cruelty was relentless. Sam, as always, said nothing. He showed up to class, did his work, and faded into the background. At least that's what we thought. The night of prom arrived, warm and clear, one of those perfect spring evenings that felt made for memories. The gym had been transformed, lights twinkling like stars, music thumping through the air. Limos lined the curb, dropping off girls in sparkling dresses, boys in sharp suits. Everyone wanted to make an entrance, everyone except Sam. I didn't expect him to come, no one did. But there he was, arriving alone, dressed in a simple black suit that looked a little worn but clean and neat. He walked in quietly, and for a moment, no one noticed. But then Jeremy spotted him. "Well, look who decided to show up," Jeremy called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey Sam, you bring your dad's crutch as a date?" Laughter rippled through the room. I cringed, waiting for Sam to turn and leave. But he didn't. He kept walking, shoulders back, face calm. He moved to a corner and stood alone, watching, waiting. And then we heard it, the low rumble of engines. At first it blended with the music, just background noise. But it grew louder, the kind of sound that made the floor vibrate, that made people stop and look around. The music cut off. People drifted toward the doors, curious. Outside, under the streetlights, a convoy of jeeps rolled up. 5, 6, maybe more. Black, sleek, shining in the night. They pulled up in a line, engines idling, lights casting long shadows, and from each one stepped men. strong, tall, their bearing unmistakable. Veterans, SEALs, brothers in arms. At their center was Sam's dad, dressed sharp, his uniform neat, his medals shining under the lights. He stood tall, leaning on his cane, his prosthetic glinting like silver in the night, and together, as one, they approached the gym. The room fell silent as the doors opened. Sam's dad entered first, his brothers flanking him. The kids who had laughed, who had mocked, stood frozen, the weight of their shame heavy in the air. Jeremy's mouth hung open, words failing him at last. Sam didn't move. He stood still, watching as his father and the SEALs walked up to him. His dad reached out, placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and nodded. No words. None were needed. The room seemed to exhale all at once, the tension breaking like a wave. That night, no one mocked Sam. No one dared. The SEALs stayed a while, talking quietly with teachers, shaking hands, offering smiles. They didn't come to intimidate. They came to stand beside one of their own. And when they left, the convoy rolling off into the night, they left behind more than silence. They left respect. They left awe. And they left a lesson none of us would ever forget. The Monday after prom, the hallways of our school felt different. It wasn't just that the streamers and leftover balloons had been taken down, or that the magic of the night had faded. There was something in the air, a hush, a weight of realization. The same kids who had laughed and jeered at Sam now couldn't quite meet his gaze. Whispers followed him still, but they were no longer cruel. They were filled with guilt, with confusion, with awe. Sam walked those halls like nothing had changed. His head high, his steps steady, just as he always had. But I could see it. The difference in the way people moved aside to let him pass, the way their eyes flicked to him and then away, unsure of what to say or do. He didn't seek their attention. He didn't gloat. He simply went about his day, as if the convoy of jeeps and the silent lesson of that night hadn't just rewritten everything. Jeremy kept his distance. The swagger that usually followed him seemed dulled, like he didn't know how to recover from what had happened. I saw him watching Sam more than once, his expression tight, as if grappling with something he didn't know how to express. For all his bravado, Jeremy had no playbook for this. The target of his jokes had become a symbol of something greater, something he couldn't mock without making a fool of himself. Teachers noticed too. I caught Mr. Graham, our history teacher, lingering at his desk as Sam entered the room, his eyes soft with what looked like respect. Mrs. DeWitt called on Sam more often, asking his opinion, treating his words like they mattered. And they did. Sam answered thoughtfully, never boastful, always precise. It was as if he'd found his voice, or maybe we'd just finally learned to hear it. I found myself thinking about Sam more than I wanted to admit, about his quiet strength, the dignity with which he'd endured so much. I thought about his father, the way he'd walked into that gym without a hint of shame or apology, surrounded by his brothers in arms. I thought about the power of that moment, and how it had changed not just Sam, but all of us. And yet, change is never easy. There were still those who didn't know how to let go of old habits. A group of sophomores tried to start something one afternoon in the parking lot, mocking Sam's father under their breath as they passed. But it didn't last. Before Sam could even react, other students stepped in. Kids who'd never spoken to him before told the sophomores to back off, to show some respect, and they did. Over the next weeks, the school began to shift in small, almost imperceptible ways. The posters in the hall promoting our sports teams now shared space with a new bulletin board, one honoring local veterans. It started with a single photo, Sam's father in uniform, placed there by Mrs. DeWitt. Soon others joined, uncles, aunts, neighbors who had served. It became a place where students stopped to look, to think, to remember. Sam, for his part, remained humble. He didn't speak about the convoy, didn't boast about the respect that had grown around him. But he did something else. He started helping. I saw him tutor a struggling freshman in math, offer his lunch to a kid who forgot his, volunteer for the cleanup committee after a pep rally. His actions spoke louder than any words. The summer approached, and with it, graduation. Our senior class, once so sure of itself, now looked at the world with different eyes, and it all began with one night, one convoy, one quiet stand. Sam taught us that strength isn't about loud words or fists raised in anger. It's about dignity, about standing tall even when the world tries to bring you down. And as I walked those halls beside him, I realized we weren't just witnessing a change in Sam. We were becoming better because of him. We weren't done learning, not by a long shot, but we were on the path, and it was a path lit by respect, by courage, and by the quiet power of doing what's right. The first days after graduation felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring out at the endless possibilities of what came next. The hallways that once rang with laughter, gossip, and footsteps were empty now, stripped of their banners and posters. But the lessons we carried, the ones that didn't fit into textbooks or final exams, weighed in our hearts. And for me and for many others, those lessons had Sam Keller's name etched all over them. That summer, Sam became a kind of local legend, though he would have hated to hear anyone say it. He worked part-time at the hardware store, always ready to load a heavy bag of soil into a trunk or find the right bolt for a repair. He ran basketball nights at the rec center, where kids flocked not because he was flashy on the court, but because he listened, because he encouraged, because he made them feel seen. And every Sunday, without fail, he helped his dad maintain the old Jeeps that had carried the seals to our prom. Together, they restored one to its former glory, planning to donate it to a veterans charity auction. When people stopped to watch them work, Sam's father would grin and say, "This one's my boy's idea. Heart of gold, that kid." Sam didn't change who he was that summer. But the town's eyes changed how they saw him. People who once turned away or joined in the jeers now waved when they passed. Strangers thanked his father for his service and clapped Sam on the back, as if trying to erase their silence from months before. But Sam, true to himself, never let bitterness take root. He met kindness with kindness, apology with grace, and disrespect, when it rarely surfaced, with quiet dignity. I remember a day in August, hot and still, when the town held its annual picnic at the park. Sam and his father manned the grill, serving up burgers and hot dogs to the long line of neighbors. Jeremy, of all people, stood beside them, flipping patties and laughing like the past had never happened. The sight of them together, side by side, spoke louder than any apology ever could. And as the sun set over the park, casting long golden shadows, I realized that this was what real strength looked like. Not loud, not boastful, but steady and true. As the weeks passed, Sam became a fixture at community events. He helped organize a charity 5K for veterans, ran a school supply drive for local kids, and joined the town council's youth committee. His name appeared in the local paper more than once, but he never sought the spotlight. If anything, he seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm just doing my part," he'd say with a shrug whenever someone praised him. Jeremy and a few others who'd once been the loudest voices against him began to change too. I saw them pitch in at events, volunteer for things they would have mocked months before. It wasn't overnight, and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. The ripples of that prom night spread further than any of us could have predicted. One afternoon, I stopped by the hardware store and found Sam helping an elderly man load lumber into his truck. When the man tried to tip him, Sam shook his head, smiled, and said, "Just happy to help, sir." The man drove off with a wave, and I saw in Sam the kind of person I wanted to be, the kind of person our town needed more of. That fall, as many of us left for college or jobs elsewhere, Sam stayed behind, enrolled in community college, working part-time, continuing to serve. And though the miles stretched between us, the lessons he taught us stayed close. I carried them with me, in the way I treated people, in the way I listened more and judged less, in the way I tried to be better, because I'd seen what better looked like. Sam Keller's legacy wasn't carved into stone or written in history books. It lived in the small, steady acts of kindness and courage that changed a town and all of us who called it home. The morning after Labor Day, the town felt quieter than usual. Maybe it was the lingering stillness of a long weekend, or maybe it was the weight of change settling over our small world. For Sam, that day marked the start of something new. Community college classes began, and though he didn't speak much about his plans, everyone knew he intended to study mechanical engineering. Fitting, given his love for rebuilding old Jeeps with his father. His first day wasn't marked by fanfare or photos, but by the quiet dignity we had come to expect from him. I watched him from a distance that morning as he helped his dad adjust the tie on his shirt before heading to campus. His father's hand lingered a moment on Sam's shoulder, pride and gratitude in his gaze. There were no words exchanged, at least none that I could hear, but none were needed. They understood each other, these two men who had endured so much and asked for so little. Sam's days filled quickly. Between classes, he worked afternoons at the hardware store and evenings at the rec center where he coached a youth basketball team. The kids adored him, drawn not by flashy plays or loud pep talks, but by his steady presence. He taught them fundamentals, sure, but more than that, he taught respect. For the game, for each other, for themselves. Parents began to request him by name when signing their children up, and the once skeptical board of the center asked if he would consider expanding the program. On weekends, Sam and his father continued restoring the last of the Convoy Jeeps. This one, they said, would stay in the family, a reminder of where they had been and how far they had come. I often passed their driveway, slowing my steps to watch them work. The sound of their shared laughter, the clink of tools against metal, the sight of grease-stained hands and easy smiles, it felt like hope, like healing. Jeremy, too, became a more familiar presence at these gatherings. He volunteered to help with the Jeep project, initially awkward, unsure if his offer would be accepted. But Sam, in his quiet way, nodded and handed him a wrench. The first few sessions were stiff, filled with more silence than talk. But over time, the barrier between them softened, worn down by shared effort and mutual respect. The fall rolled on, and the leaves began their slow burn from green to gold. The town prepared for its annual autumn festival, a beloved tradition filled with hay rides, craft booths, and the famous chili cook-off. Sam's father, usually content to observe from the sidelines, signed up to compete, encouraged by Sam. Together they tested recipes in their small kitchen, filling the air with spices and laughter. The night of the festival, their booth drew a crowd, not because of the food, though their chili was excellent, but because people wanted to be near them, to share in their warmth, their strength, and always, beneath the public moments, were the private ones. The early mornings when Sam ran the trails behind the high school, clearing his head before class. The quiet evenings when he sat on the porch, sketching designs for future Jeep modifications, his father offering advice from his chair nearby. The visits to the veterans' home, where Sam read aloud to men and women whose bodies were failing, but whose spirits remained unbroken. Sam's world, once so small and filled with judgment, had expanded, and through his quiet strength, he had brought the rest of us along with him. As autumn deepened, Sam's influence continued to ripple through the town like the steady current of a river. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. The Jeep they had restored together became a familiar sight at community events, often parked beside the Veterans Memorial or leading local parades. People would gather around, asking questions about its history, about the night it had first appeared at prom. Sam never said much, letting his father tell the story if he chose to, but his presence spoke volumes. Sam's work at the rec center grew too. He organized clinics that taught not just basketball skills, but life lessons: teamwork, perseverance, humility. Parents stayed after practices, watching, grateful for the impact he had on their kids. Local businesses began donating equipment, and the mayor stopped by one evening to shake Sam's hand, thanking him for what he was building, but Sam always deflected praise. "It's for the kids," he'd say with a small smile. "That's what matters." Jeremy became a true friend in those months, no longer lingering in the background but stepping forward as a partner in Sam's projects. The two of them spent hours after work tuning engines, painting fences for elderly neighbors, and volunteering at food drives. The ease between them grew, the past transformed into quiet understanding. When asked about their friendship, Sam would simply say, "People change. Sometimes they just need a reason." The bond between Sam and his father also deepened. They began visiting schools together, speaking about service, resilience, and community. The students listened, truly listened, as Sam's father shared stories of his time as a SEAL, of hardship and hope, of what it meant to serve something bigger than oneself. Sam's quiet support beside him, the respect between them, left lasting impressions. Winter approached, and with it came new challenges. A storm downed power lines, left parts of town in the dark for days. Sam and his father were among the first to check on neighbors, bringing firewood, clearing driveways, helping where they could. Their Jeep, with its restored strength, became a lifeline, ferrying supplies through the snow. In those cold, dark nights, the warmth Sam brought to our community shone all the brighter. And as the year came to a close, we realized that his legacy wasn't just a story of redemption or quiet strength. It was a blueprint, a reminder that we all have the power to lift others, to lead with kindness, and to leave the world better than we found it.